Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. In the next half hour or so then, we will see what's making the headlines with Christopher Hope, Chief Political Correspondent at the Daily Telegraph, and Allison Morris, columnist at the Belfast Telegraph. Great to see both of you. As ever, we turn our attention, first of all, to the front pages, starting with the Telegraph, which leads with the confusion from the government today on whether or not people may travel to areas where cases of the Indian variant of coronavirus are high. That is also on the front page of the Eye, their headline, Number 10 cancels accidental lockdowns. And that is also the main story for The Guardian. Anger forces climb down over travel restrictions. Britain is heading for record-breaking vaccination numbers over the next fortnight, according to The Times, as all over 30s will be offered a jab. Airlines have changed their flight paths to avoid Belarusian airspace after authorities in Belarus used a false bomb threat to force a plane to land to arrest a journalist. That's the front page of the Metro. Financial Times leading with the Chancellor's plans to block some companies from listing on the London Stock Exchange on national security grounds over dirty money concerns. More papers still to come in. We will check those out as soon as they arrive. Let's get the thoughts, though, initially from Christopher Hope and Allison Morris. Welcome again to both of you. And starting with the Daily Telegraph, Christopher, you might as well kick this off then. They use the word farce for the latest advice for these areas hit by the Indian variant.
It does seem extraordinary, doesn't it? We've been through so many ups and downs with these lockdowns, and yet how much has the government really learned? This is guidance that appeared late last week, urging 1.7 million people in 8 parts of England to restrict their travel in and out of the area in the northwest of England. And yet this information was only really seen by somebody on Monday, and by Tuesday it looks like the government's overruling it. It will update the guidance and make sure it's only guidance and not actually any kind of actual physical restrictions. We're so used and tired of these different rules coming. I do hope that when finally we get out of this mess, there'll be a degree of understanding of the misery it can inflict on so many people.
Yes, indeed. But the problem now, I suppose, Alison, is that the denial of local lockdown is a stronger message than if you're in these areas, please take care. So it really has backfired, hasn't it?
It is, because it was only guidance. These aren't new restrictions. You know, this is asking people to use common sense. It's not as if people are going to be, fined for breaking these restrictions. But I think that the problem is that last summer we came out of the restrictions, and I think we all had quite a relaxed summer. And then in the autumn, we know that we had like a huge second wave. I think that the sort of game changer there is the vaccine, and we're hoping that we don't go back into that. But the mixed messaging from government, I think, has been pretty poor during this period. And that is not just the Westminster government. As you know, the 4 nations have taken their own approach. And in Northern Ireland, we have had the talk shows this week have been full of people who are completely confused and baffled as to what is restrictions, what is guidance, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. And a lot of this is to do with travel, because we're looking at bank holiday travel. We're looking at, one minister saying don't travel at all unless it's necessary. Another minister is trying to promote local travel and saying they're going to, put new measures in place to help the hotel industry try and pick up business over the summer months. So there's conflicting messages coming out, and that just confuses people. And I maintain if you went out into a busy street anywhere, either in Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales or England, and stopped 100 people, you would be lucky to find 2 who could explain to you what the current regulations are.
And this also, to me, Alison, is a classic case of Whitehall knows best. But we're reporting in the Telegraph that the decision was made by the Department of Health, and then no one told local leaders on the ground. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a classic case of left and right hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, once again, another example. If you drill down to the detail, then it matters, Christopher. It sounds quite sensible that if you're in these areas, please try and socialise outside. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Yeah. And then someone comes along and says, well, what about my wedding that's in that area? And do I let out my holiday home for half term next week? And it ggets very confusing very quickly.
It's because, Anna, all our lives are complicated and different, and we're all individual, thank goodness. As Monty Python once said, we are all individual and different.
Phone instead of a laptop.
and that's why you can't really have rules from government to apply on lives. I mean, the sooner that we can go back to a degree of common sense, and I thought we went there really on May the 17th when Boris Johnson said, you can hug someone, but be careful. I think the idea of just being careful is the new watchword from the government. But when we have these rules coming out and no one's told, what's an utter cock-up. And I really hope this is the last time we see this in this pandemic.
Yeah, let's move on to the more optimistic news, which is in the Times, which is this idea that the next 2 weeks will be a great vaccine blitz and the age ranges will come down, that all over 30s will be offered the jabs. I know that in Wales they've got as far as the over 18s, haven't they? How's Northern Ireland doing at the moment on this one, Alison?
Yeah, really well. At this point in time, over 25s can book online to have their jab. And that's turned into something of, quite a day out. So people are almost organising along with mates to go and get their jabs at the same time. And hilariously, the Odyssey Arena, which was, the big concert venue in Belfast, that's being used as a vaccination centre. And someone has noted that the music has changed depending on the genre of people who are being vaccinated. So since it was the 50s, the over 50s, the over 40s, and now it's the over 20s. The music apparently is changing according to generation, so it's almost like getting out to a concert, going to get your vaccination.
I can
What's your favourite music, Alison? Are you ABBA?
I can't say which one of those groups I fall into. Well, to say that I'm double jabbed at this point, which sort of ages me, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, never ask a woman her age, isn't that the rule? I'm still waiting for my second, just so you know.
It's so exciting, though. I mean, this is where it's going. I mean, what's happening is the government is in a race against time against this Indian variant, as it's known, but the B.1.617.2, as we should call it. It's a real urgency to get these jabs done. I reported for the Sunday Telegraph just 8 days ago, they're looking to hit 1 million a day, and that is the target. I've been told by senior figures in government. They're going to go to 800,000 very shortly. They want to nudge towards 1 million, and that'll mean that they might get to giving everyone first jabs by the end of next month, which will be extraordinary. And that, I expect that's where the government's going, that when they reopen finally on June 21st, most adults will be jabbed. And what a moment that'll be. The street parties will be huge, Anna.
Absolutely. The question is what we can do about it. I know that was something your paper discussed yesterday, is, at what point they decide that actually being vaccinated brings some liberty. And is this a sort of June the 21st moment, or do we just wait and see, Christopher? What do you reckon?
Well, I think we have to wait until June 21st, but not a moment or second longer. This is not what Boris Johnson came into government to do. He's a freedom-loving Tory. Even Matt Hancock told me he's a freedom-loving Tory. Well, start showing it is what Tories and what maybe a lot of the country might say to the government. Start showing that actually they trust people to live their own lives. And I think it's looking very upbeat at the moment. And I think you've got the contrast of the news splash in the Telegraph against what people are feeling. I mean, people are basically, they're over these lockdowns, they're over the restrictions, they are embracing life out there in the real world, and the Times splash is reflecting that. That's where everyone's going. They don't want to hear about this chaos about when to lock down, when not to lock down. They hope that's over with.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm over, it's the weather. It's going to get better, though, apparently, isn't it? We'll look at that a bit later on. We will discuss lots more in the next half of our programme, including the appearance tomorrow of Dominic Cummings before MPs, plus Boris Johnson vowing to take on the dog nappers with tougher prison sentences. Back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Christopher Hope and Allison Morris. Welcome back to both of you. Let's turn our attention to something that's happening on Wednesday, as I'm sure you both know. Top of the Daily Mail. It says the Prime Minister wanted to be infected with COVID on live TV and called the virus Kung Flu, revealed the grenades Cummings will launch today. That being tomorrow for us right now, of course. Inside the Times, Cummings, the Prime Minister, said COVID only kills 80-year-olds. Alison, this is going to be an uncomfortable day for Downing Street, you think?
Look, it is. And let's not pretend we all won't be glued to what Dominic Cummings is going to say. But I think that we also need to remember that he was part of government. He was at the heart of government when these decisions were being made. He's not some gallant whistleblower who's come in to sort of blow the lid on the government. This is someone who has had a fairly nasty fallout with his former boss, and as you said, is ready to start throwing grenades. I think one commentator said Dominic Cummings is the type of man that brings a bazooka to a knife fight. And that's what we're all expecting. We're expecting fireworks tomorrow. What I would say is, as a crime reporter, I have covered many trials where they have had people they call assisting offenders. And usually when someone is complicit in something, whether it be working in government or anything else, and they're given evidence against someone who they used to be associate with, they tend to downplay their role in something and upplay somebody else's. So I think that we need to remember that Dominic Cummings was an advisor to the government at this time, that any decisions that were made, he can't just wash his hands of them. But also, as journalists, and even I'm sure most members of the public will be glued to hear exactly what is said. This is a man who knows where the bodies are buried, and he seems to have kept the receipts. And we'll all be glued to see exactly what it is he's going to do on Boris Johnson, who must, I think, be going to have a fairly uncomfortable evening's sleep tonight.
One of the most powerful advisors, you might say, there has been. Many people, though, Christopher, are saying nobody cares about looking backwards right now. It's about the vaccine and planning the trip to the pub for the first time and all that sort of stuff. But here we are yet again with the real confusion over whether or not there's a local lockdown in areas hit by the Indian variant, whether or not you can fly to an amber country or not. We're still in this short-term, messy decision-making. It's as if the lessons haven't been learnt by this government that Dominic Cummings is complaining about.
Yes, there's lots of. I wonder. This might be not Cummings' last stand tomorrow, but it's certainly going to be, the last time we're going to listen to him closely, I think, because he's going to get it all off his chest. He's been tweeting since Saturday, 40 strong little postings on social media about what he's going to say tomorrow. He's loving, playing the press. I would look at the Times. They've put the Cummings preview inside on page 7. The front page is, as we discussed before the break, is all about releasing lockdown. I think in many ways, this is looking backwards to what the PM may have said. It only kills 80-year-olds. Well, it's not quite true, but certainly those over 80 are more at risk. And this story next door to this story is a poor guy called Bill Shakespeare, the first guy to get his jab. The Times reporter has now died, aged 81. So, we know about this virus. I think people, as seen by all the opinion polls and also in the by-election recently in Hartlepool, they understand this is a novel virus, an unknown killer, an unknown way of coping with it, certainly last year. And I think people understand it and actually forgive the PM for quite a lot, I think.
Yes, I suppose that sort of remains to be seen, because we all knew about it from January, and the word from Mr. Cummings was that, even 2 weeks before the actual lockdown, there wasn't even a lockdown plan. So it wasn't about waiting for the right time to have a lockdown. It's just they hadn't even thought about it. So, I don't know how forgiving people will really feel about it.
Well, I'm only going on the polls, Anna. I'm only going on the fact that the recent poll forecast the PM getting a 122-seat majority, up a third on 2019. They're certainly not willing. But you may well be right that when we start going through the line-by-line approach in those key weeks last year in this official inquiry that starts next year, then it may all come back and bite the PM and the government. But currently, it's not cutting through, and people just want to get past this. But I do. I know there are mistakes made. There's no question issues with this lockdown. But you're not seeing out there in the polling at the moment. That's my point.
OK. Alison, we've only got a minute or so left. Do you want to pick the story that you want to go to? You've got dog napping, Tory Islamophobia, or the National Trust chairman quits. All the things we should have told you about so far in this programme. Alison.
I don't know, let's have a bit of dog napping, shall we? Just to really mix it up.
Right, front page of the Times.
And I think that this is a case of, when they say, government comes out and throws a dead cat on the table. In this case, Boris Johnson appears to be throwing a live dog on the table as a distraction tactic for what's going on tomorrow. So Johnson's talking about changing the sentences for people who dog nappers, to increase the sentences, to make it more of a deterrent. I'm sure this is something he probably does feel quite strongly about, but it is a case of, a good news story on a day when there's likely to be a lot of bad news around for the government.